One of the most awesome things about being human is that we have really incredible brains. At our best, we have tremendous capacity to organize complex social networks that coordinate thousands of people. We can do everything from feeding people on the other side of the globe, to peering into the depths of the atom, to airlifting a child across a continent for medical care. We feel empathy for each other, take each other's perspectives, find creative ways to get win-win solutions, solve staggeringly complex problems, learn from each other, and feel good about helping each other. All these together are what I'm going to call our social brain, the set of capabilities that let us create and effectively manage very complex social situations. But there's a problem. These capabilities, along with what we generally experience as conscious thought, are incredibly energy intensive. Brains are 2% of our body weight, but they use about 20% of our calories to power them. And when our energy starts to run low, these capabilities start to power off. We've all experienced this when we're exhausted. We know we ought to be able to answer that email, but we just can't think. Or we're too tired to be patient with our kids. We lose access to these pretty regularly. Fortunately, the brain has a backup system. What we experience as conscious thought is layered on top of a much more efficient automatic thinking system. If you've read Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow, this is his System 1 versus System 2. But this backup system is any behavior that is simple enough to do by reflex or has been trained to automaticity. So you can be too tired to think, but still successfully navigate Penn Station to get home because you've practiced the route until you don't have to think about it. Similarly, there are some very basic reflexes like freezing or giving in or lashing out that we can do automatically. And if you think about it, if you've ever interacted with someone who is exhausted, hungry, sick, losing cognitive capacity as they age, distracted, etc., then you've seen this. The brain is holding on to those backup systems as long as it can, even as other capabilities grind to a halt. What people don't realize, and what's super relevant for conflict, is that something very similar happens when we perceive ourselves to be under threat. This may be a physical threat, but it can also be a threat to our social status, our view of ourselves as a good person, or anything else that's important to us. When this happens, our body diverts energy to the heart, lungs, and muscles in order to prepare us for physical action. And it takes that energy away from the big energy hogs of the body, digestion, the immune system, and the brain. It doesn't feel the same as being exhausted because physically our energy levels are in overdrive and we're very alert, but the cognitive impact is similar. Most of the abilities we need to successfully problem solve go offline. And what we're left with is the subset of automatic and reflexive behaviors that our brain has specifically earmarked for times when we perceive a threat to our survival. Call this our survival brain. So again, this is a relatively small subset of skills, and it grows smaller as a person's sense of being threatened escalates. And what behaviors are in our survival brain does vary from person to person, and it can be trained. So, for example, emergency personnel often do very complex life-saving behaviors before their conscious mind even catches up. But in general, there are some very common survival brain characteristics that are highly relevant to how we interact with each other in conflict. One of these is tunnel vision. We lose our peripheral awareness and are focused just on the threat in front of us. Another one is a sort of tunnel vision with respect to time, a sense of immediacy and urgency that only right now matters. We lose access actually to much of our memory, and we also lose access to our ability to think through the consequences of what's going to happen in the future. We also have catastrophization, this very extreme binary thinking that I have to get what I want right now or we're all going to die. It's very, very extreme. And we have access to fight, flight, freeze, appease, which is sort of those really basic survival responses that even our lizard ancestors could do. And also one of the things that is impacted here is simply our ability to take in new information. So we end up with very quick, very less accurate judgments. So especially anything that's ambiguous is likely to be interpreted as a threat. We're going to make very, very quick snap judgments. And this is also where we're much more vulnerable to bias and stereotypes because it's happening at a level below conscious thought. And in particular, We're not really available, our brains are not really available to take in new information. We lose access to our curiosity, creativity, perspective taking, and we lose access to the ability to slow down and think things through. That urgency kicks in, and anything has to be figured out right now. There's not time to think. And this is where there's a glitch in how the human brain works that can really blow up relationships and organizations. Once we drop into our survival brain, the social brain skills we specifically evolved to solve our problems and deal with other human beings have gone offline. In fact, much of what we think of as our sense of who we are is offline. And people can and do say things and do things that they would never ordinarily do and are often not even conscious that they're doing. So, the key thing to recognize when we're looking at how to prevent conflict from fracturing organizations is this. In conflict, we're often not talking to the person we know. We're talking to what is essentially a set of recorded tracks that they have internalized enough to still have access to when there isn't enough energy to power the things that most likely we actually like about them. A lot of the time when we see relationships and organizations blow up, particularly the how could they have said that to me variety, at its core, what we're seeing are people's survival brains talking to each other without having access to all the higher order thinking skills that are supposed to help us navigate social systems situations effectively. And furthermore, this tends to happen under conditions like, one of those awful voice recognition systems in the phone menu, where what's listening to you gets what you're saying wrong half the time, but brings up a new menu track anyway. And one of the most critical ways we prevent conflict from going off the rails is to recognize when we're arguing with the message system, stop, and instead identify what we need to do to get through to a real life person. And that's what our role play is about. So close, so close. I've been working on this voter guide for weeks, my entire break. I just have to push publish and it will be over. Five, four, three,
Ring, ring,
two,
ring, ring, ring.
hello?
Hey, so I was looking over the voter guide and there's so much in there, and I just think it's a little too long and I'm worried people won't read it. So, what if we made like an overall summary and cut a bunch of the explanation part?
Erica's brain is not available right now. Please press 1 to have your concerns minimized and dismissed. Please press 2 for sobbing about how overwhelmed I am.
I'd like to talk to a person.
Did you say personal attack? Okay, here's an itemized list of everything you've ever done that minorly annoyed me, delivered in as mean a way as possible.
Allison's brain is not available. Please press 1 for a defensive explanation of how dare you misinterpret my intentions.
Please press 2 for a wild overgeneralization about how you always do this.
Please press 3 for an itemized list of every complaint I have about you that I've been holding my tongue about.
Please press 4 for me to weaponize specialized knowledge to make you feel like worthless scum.
Please press 5 for me to rage quit this call. Ring, ring, ring. Ring, ring, ring.
Hey, Allison?
You will not believe what Erica said about me.
Stephanie's brain is not available. Please press 1 for generalized agreement noises while I do something else.
Hurt venting about someone I thought was my friend.
Ring, 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 ring.
Hold on, Allison. Hey, Erica, what's up?
Wildly inaccurate statement about Allison's intentions, morals, and ancestry.
So, are you in your social brain or your survival brain right now?
Survival brain.
Deep breath. Take another one. So, what do you need to get back in your social brain?
I need someone to tell me I did a good job. I worked so hard on this voter guide.
You did a great job. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I suppose it was, wasn't it?
What else do you need?
I mean, probably like a break. I mean, I worked on this my entire vacation.
Great. Take a break. You deserve it. How long do you think you need?
Um, I mean, probably like a couple hours. I was just about to submit the thing.
All right, do it. Go steam or something, read a book, just kind of chill. I think that's what you should do.
Okay, thanks, Stephanie. I'll go take a break and yeah, I can do that. Thanks.
Awesome.
Ring, 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 ring. Hi, Allison. I'm sorry I said all those things earlier.
Allison's brain is still not available. Press 1 for me to threaten to take all my toys and go home.
Listen, I totally get it.
Please leave a message while I decide if I want to never speak to you again. Beep.
Okay, so yeah, so I get it. If you don't want to talk to me right now, I really didn't mean those things I said. They were kind of hurtful, like really hurtful. Yeah, but I value our friendship and I'd like to try to work things out. So I'm wondering if you could maybe take a little time and call me back if and I mean when I hope you're up for talking.
Ring, 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 ring.
Hey, Allison.
So, I I was really hurt by what you said. You called me a parasite.
I know, I'm sorry. I really shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have called you that.
No, you shouldn't.
It was just, I completely exhausted myself working on the voter guide. And when you criticized it and asked me to change it, it was just too much. And I kind of snapped. But I'm sorry. I really shouldn't have taken that out on you.
I totally get it. You worked so hard on that, and I didn't mean to sound critical. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, the reason it hit so hard is just that, like, I've been thinking the same thing in the back of my mind as I've been doing this whole, like, oh, it's too much, but I don't, I spent all of break on it.
I know, and thank you for doing that. I don't think anything needs to change right now. Maybe for next time, we can talk about what it will look like ahead of time and maybe get you some helpers for it.
Yeah, that would help a lot. Thanks.
But I have to ask, did you really mean all that stuff you said about me being a parasite who doesn't pull my own weight?
No, no, I really didn't. I mean, now that I'm back in my normal brain, what you do is completely fine. Like you do so much for this organization. It's like we're all like working to the max here. It's just when I go over my own limit, that's what I've got to be careful for. I got to stop myself from going over my limit because that's when I get angry at the world and it's just like everything, you
You
know?
have to take care of yourself. Is there anything I can do to help?
Please press 1 for reflexive denial of any possible need for external help.
Ah, right. We'll work on that.
So that was a humorous example, but the pattern is very real. It can be incredibly disconcerting to get to know someone, to consider them a friend, and then to suddenly be confronted with someone going off on you about an incident they wildly misinterpreted and they refuse to listen to a word you say. Organizations can and do split over such incidents. What's critical to realize is that when you are talking to someone's message system or survival brain, you're not interacting with the creative and compassionate friend you know. Instead, you're essentially talking to a recording of them. There's no point in arguing because they cannot take in new information. Your only goal is to push the right sequence of buttons to get through to a live human being. Doing that can involve having internalized a shared language that helps people come back to themselves. And it can be any physical action like taking a deep breath or looking at things behind oneself that are not natural to do in a life and death situation and tell the threat sensing part of our brain that the danger is over. It can be taking a half-hour break to exercise and let the adrenaline fade. Whatever it is, it needs to be simple enough that either a friend can prompt you to do it or you can train it into being one of the tracks in your survival brain. The key for doing the latter is to recognize that programming a new menu option into our survival brain is not at all like the cognitive learning most of us associate with school. What we pack into our memory does little good when our memory itself is not accessible. Instead, it is much more akin to the physical learning that we do when learning to ride a bike or play an instrument. It is repetition of tiny and simple pieces of action until they have sunk in so deeply that they are automatic. It is very much possible to create new menu options in the survival brain, but it can be disconcertingly slow because it is a different kind of internalization and learning. But the ultimate goal there is to be able to recognize for oneself, oh, wait, I am not in a brain state that's going to be productive right now. I need to take a deep breath. I need to ask someone for help. That is something that the survival brain can handle and can fit into those message system tracks. But whatever problem you or your organization is trying to wrestle with, it will be much more solvable when everyone is back in their social brain. And while people are still responsible for their actions, regardless of what brain they're in, recognizing when someone else is in their survival brain can make it easier to take what they say less personally. The job of the survival brain is to latch on to whatever sources of power it can to make a perceived threat go away right now, regardless of the damage that does. People often feel differently, or at least have a much more nuanced take, after they come back to themselves. Now, this is not to say that no harm comes from people who are in their social brain. In particular, the social brain can be hijacked, especially in situations where belonging to a group has been set up to require doing harm to an outsider. We also see people who have been persuaded through the best of intentions that doing grievous harm is necessary for the greater good. All of these sources of harm can be just as, if not more, serious than the harm coming out of someone's survival brain. But on the whole, the problems we face right now, ensuring everyone has access to basic necessities, responding compassionately to migrants, reducing climate change, ending mass incarceration, so on and so forth, can't be solved by the simplistic reflexes that make sense to the survival brain. On the contrary, we need creativity, compassion, and curiosity. We need people to be willing to make long-term changes to their consumption habits, act compassionately in conflict, share resources, and work together. All of these the social brain has in abundance, if only we can keep our personal and collective access to it.